Let's get started. Okay, hello, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. I would like to give a few housekeeping updates. The audience will be muted at this time, and we will be starting a recording. If you have any questions while the webinar is being held, please feel free to add them into the IM window, and we will share them with our presenter. After the webinar is completed, we will send out a link of the recording, and let's get started with Mike.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jasmine, for the intros and getting this all coordinated, and thanks for everyone for joining us here today. Today we'll be going over mobile device management, what you need to and should know. So we'll let me start by actually presenting out the screen here so you guys can actually see the presentation. And I'll just wait a second for that should pop up for you. All right.
You will now be placed into conference. To mute your line, press *6. To unmute, press #6.
All right. So today we'll be talking about mobile device management. So just to get you off with a little bit of information about New Signature. So at New Signature here, we like to specialize in not just delivering great technologies, which is definitely part of the things that we'd like to offer, but also we want to build a holistic approach to how we deliver those technologies and help you consume them in the best way possible. We plan out all of our engagements through strategy, planning, design, implementation, and extending the functionality of a base core installation to manage and support that and do training and adoption. So we really cover the full life cycle spectrum of any type of installation or any type of project that we might take on, and we do that with a background of a tremendous amount of great technical knowledge. We have over 400 certifications all throughout the Microsoft stack, and really any type of Microsoft technologies, we specialize in them heavily. So we definitely have a great background in that and use that to facilitate knowledge transfer and best practices across any of these elements in that lifecycle management process. So just to give you a little bit of background on us. You could, of course, request any additional information on New Signature, and we'd be happy to provide that for you. All right, so let's kind of jump into what we're all here to talk about today, which is mobile device management. So from a very broad standpoint, people might think of mobile device management as just, managing a cell phone or a mobile device that a user uses. It could be provided by the company. It could not. It could be their home device. But an old way of thinking is like an employee had a laptop and a phone that was given by the company, and they go off to work, and those devices are then managed by IT and secured and have content delivered to them. And whether the user is in the office or whether they're off, at a meeting or at a conference, they're connected. They have information, and they're able to use resources. So even that, in and of itself, that is mobile device management. Making sure that happens. But but what actually mobile device management has become, or what MDM has become, is much larger than that, because they see no longer is it just one user, one device, and no longer are they restricted to one avenue in which they consume data or which they consume company-based resources. And by any measure of any factor, all of these numbers are growing. The number of users using devices, the number of devices that one person is using, the number of ways that a single person is connected, the number of ways that they want to be connected or want to access data, and that data can be, again, it could be enterprise data, it could be their own personal data. There's definitely a mix of information that people are accessing from a mix of devices, right? So you have people who want to access enterprise data on their personal devices and vice versa, and every which way in combination there in between. So that gets to be a very hairy situation. That's very difficult for where do you draw those lines, where do you want to allow people to connect from, and how, and from using what. So and basically future projections only show that this type of connections and these people using these types of devices is only going to grow over time, and it's going to continue growing for the foreseeable future. And it's definitely the goal of IT individuals and IT companies and support staff to facilitate and support that growth, and to empower users to be able to access where and how they want to. But sometimes they feel like they don't have the right tools, or that there's still security policies that haven't been flushed out, or even beyond security, just general use case policies, or maybe even access to specific needed tools is just not possible. So there's restrictions in place, or at least the perceived restrictions. So just to continue along those lines, so you can see that over here we have this graphic is broken up into a little bit of a square chart. So you have the user trends on the left, and what the users want to be in control of, or what they are already in control of. And you can see on the right, it's like how IT looks to manage that, and how it looks to facilitate the use of those things. So as more and more people in the workforce become more mobile, connect from anywhere, and they're really blurring those lines between work and life, IT is trying to figure out how to deal with those changes, how to deal with the security around those changes, to how to increase productivity for the users who would like to work that way. And obviously there's a lot going on with that. So maybe new technologies are needed, maybe new training is needed, and all of those then feed into budgetary restrictions or budgetary requirements. And then where does that come from? Is it worth it? How do I make a business use case then from an IT side of things to help facilitate that change that the users are pushing and generating? So it's definitely a complex problem. And definitely it has complex solutions as well. So and also on the end user side, they have that dilemma of, well, do I want to use, or do I have to use my corporate device? Why can't I get this on my personal device? And on the IT side, they have to figure out the means and methods of either facilitating a secure environment for them to be able to work the way in which the users want to work, or they have to provide an avenue in which to produce a different alternative, but for the users to still be able to achieve the end goal. So, and that's complex. There's a lot involved in there. How do you get these big complicated programs with access to all these data for end users to be able to use from anywhere? And how do you then manage those devices, right? So, and one of the other issues that's driving a lot of this is that the consumerization of IT is accelerating the rate in which that these things are being demanded from the end users. So as people, consume more and more technology, more and more applications in their personal life, and then they want to have that, that ease of use, that same types of functionality in the enterprise level, either it has to be there on the enterprise level, or they're going to try to find a way to make it work, and that's kind of the things that IT is looking to avoid at times. So let's assume that, okay, we're going to go down this road of actually how do we get to this end state where people are able to access everything from anywhere and any device, and it's all going to be secure, and it's all going to work the way that is great for the end user, secure for IT, and everyone's happy. Well, there's a number of considerations. So listed out here. So starting off with the devices. What specific devices do we want to allow things to work on? And when we say devices, it also can be that can be mobile phones, that can be laptops, that can be tablets, and it could be any type of operating system on there, everything from Linux and Windows and iOS and Android and anything in between, different types of Android. All right, so where do we want these things to be delivered to, and then how do we want them to be governed, and when it is being, what type of policies do we want to put in place for the governance, and do we want different types of policies for different device types, and then where does the support lie? Does it extend all the way throughout? So if someone is connecting to company-based resources on their home devices, is that the responsibility of IT to have to deal with that and support that, and where do those lines where are they? Basically, most people can attend to now that even if you have a no user personal device support, it still eats up time. It still eats up corporate dollars. People still bring those questions to IT's attention. It does happen. Mobile applications. So there's your mobile applications that are fed through enterprise portals for your enterprise. There are ones from the public cloud offerings and public mobile apps for Android and Microsoft and Apple and all of those. Do we want them on devices? Do we want to have users have the same experience with those apps as they do with enterprise apps? All of that is possible, but how do we want to manage that? What type of IT infrastructure will it take to do this? And is that infrastructure on-prem? Is it in the cloud? Is that itself, a new form, a new way of doing things? Network access. How are they on the network? Are they off the network? Do we provide different experiences for those situations? And lastly, of course, security. So everything from authentication to policies to who's connecting and when and how, all that needs to be taken into consideration. So taking these elements and applying it to mobile devices and all the different use cases of mobile devices it gets obviously very complex also, because you have to accommodate for each one of these things across a number of different scenarios. Right. So the way that typically you'd start by breaking that out is taking those considerations and then applying it to your two use cases that you're used to. So on the left there, you have your enterprise solutions, you have all your desktops, you have all of your laptops, and you have some of your mobile devices that you're used to currently managing. Right. So you're going to take those considerations you've already used to applying it there, and you're going to apply it there. Then you're going to take that same thing, you're going to build up another set of requirements the same way you did it in the past, and you're going to apply it to all of your mobile devices. And then you start to figure out, okay, now that we have a plan, our considerations are being taken into account, we're going to implement this plan and start to deliver these services to all of our end users, and we're going to do it in this fashion. Well, it's pretty solid. Right, but you can see there's still two very distinct lines, a big separation in how things are managed between those two. And that's really where disconnects can start to happen. And they happen mostly because anytime you have multiple points of management, either something doesn't get crossed over properly, or the experience is slightly different, or it doesn't integrate 100% in some fashion or another. And these items, they pertain to both the IT management side as well as the end user experience side. So if an end user is used to going to Software Center inside of their local PC at work, and they're able to go in and get an application that's distributed out to their enterprise, why shouldn't they have that same experience through a mobile device solution, a mobile device management solution, right? They should be able to have that same experience where they can go in and get an application the same way that they've got it before in the past. And if applications were just automatically showed up for them in the past, that if they needed something in it, it was just there for them, it should do the same thing here. So how do we get to that point? How do we get to the point where the devices and experience for the end users are the same, and the devices and the management of those devices and experiences are the same for the IT individuals, where enterprise solutions and policies and all of the considerations for MDM apply for MDM for all those devices, all those use cases, as well as everything else that is in your environment. Right, and then extending it just beyond that, but how do we extend it past our environment, and how do we do all of that securely, and how do we do that onto any device, and so it doesn't have to matter? Well, one of the big places to kind of really start thinking about this is if we look at the managed enterprise solution. So this is basically deconstructing every component that goes into device management, just even on an on-premise, or just if you're thinking about just rolling out a new operating system or just rolling anything out. This is the breakdown of it, where you start to think about the user settings, the applications, the roles, enterprise application security settings, and the hardware, the operating system, and then managing all that. So from this high level of managed solutions, so this is managing everything that goes into a typical deployment for your enterprise. Well, if we start to pick this apart and then look to deliver services or deliver out these specific elements to our enterprise environment, regardless of any specificities of one single item. So let's say, for instance, we want to look at user settings. Well, we can have user profile management. We can have things like that roaming profiles, and then take it a step further with having UEV or virtual user experiences, which basically takes the user settings and virtualizes them, and then you can deliver that cross-platform and cross-device, and it's basically what roaming profile should have been. So once we take a slice out of this and basically start to manage the one individual element, we can then start to deliver that element to other devices and keep a cohesive experience across anything that a user will start to touch. So obviously that's great from the end user perspective, because they're going to have a single experience on anything, but then also it's going to be great from an IT management perspective, because you're going to have a single place of management for that particular slice, so to speak. So obviously, if we pick a different one, something like enterprise applications, right? So we're all familiar with the mass rollouts of applications and large-scale deployments of applications. You do it by scripting, you do it by using SCCM, you do it by even pushing it by group policy, right? So the idea of just going and installing a single application on one device is not maybe not the best idea, right? So when we start off with doing a little bit more automation, then a little bit more customization and automation, a little bit of more process refinement, and we're able to deliver that out on an enterprise level. Well, what if we then take that application layer and we take that out and we start to think of, well, how do we deliver this same application, the same application experience across all of our devices, across both of the two stacks, the enterprise stack and the mobile device stack? Well, maybe we do it with something like software as a service, right? So if we're looking at something like Office 365, and which has Microsoft Word and the web apps and those items, well, then all of a sudden we're starting to extend some of that functionality, and an end user is able to use Microsoft Word on one of their mobile devices because it's ran through a browser, and they're also able to use it on the desktop as well. Now, that's a great solution. You're starting to give access to people to have that same application in both places, right? And you're able to deliver that to them. But it's not exactly right just yet. But at least it's a step in the right direction. And the reason that it's not quite there is because that the end user experience is different from the web portion as it is the fully installed on-prem on their workstation environment, right? They're slightly different. Plus, now we're talking about two places for IT individuals to manage these things, where they have to, still manage the full install of Office, and they have to manage the full install or manage the web app and all of the licensing and everything else that goes along with that, right? So it's getting better. You're delivering the different services, but it's not 100% cohesive yet. So we can see here those different, and we can run through more examples about each one, but you get the idea. It's that taking out and sectioning out each one of these specific portions of a managed solution, and then applying all of the considerations to it and delivering those things to both the enterprise level and the mobile device level, and trying to make them as seamless and cohesive as possible. So we can see where things start to get more complicated and more hairy, but also giving you finer level of control, and with finer level of control, that's where you're able to build in security. And plus, you're able to build in the correct people and the correct teams in order to support each item properly. So going back to the examples that we just gave, something like that, the user and app experience. Once we section that out and that becomes a solution that's not specifically prevalent to just or just on one machine or just on their mobile device, but it is a slice that is essentially managed by IT. And we'll talk about some specific technologies again that will help get to those points. But once that is sectioned out, the appropriate IT individual can manage that. The appropriate person, the appropriate team is able to troubleshoot it and support it and go through the life cycle of that particular slice. So basically, we're not putting too many eggs in one basket. We're also not throwing too many incorrect resources at an entire stack of problems. We're really compartmentalizing how IT deals with it, and it frees up everyone else to be able to focus on their correct roles and their correct places along this the compartmentalization of this solution, right? So it also allows the consumer to be able to get the right slice for the right device, right? So they can easily be able to pick out and receive the correct item for depending on the use case that they need it for. All right, so some of the specific products and some of the specific items that would actually allow us to kind of get there, and how do we break up those things and apply governance and apply security and everything else to those slices. Well, we can start off by looking at the typical enterprise on-prem solutions, where it's basically enabling users to access their apps and data from many devices, right? So using things like System Center for specifically with SCCM, you can deliver out applications to devices and to many devices. You can also use SCCM to deliver a single type of application in multiple forms to users and different use cases for that user. So it's not as known in SCCM that you can actually have an application delivered to a user for their primary PC, have that same application delivered in a different form to a loaner laptop, and have a virtualized version of that application delivered to another device, and so on and so forth. So that's really a great tool to kind of just be able to deliver out apps or deliver out these applications to any device that a user might use. So definitely in a way to kind of bring all that together, allow the worker to be able to use whatever they want to use and have SCCM delivered out is a great step in the right direction. And also, again, from the IT management side, you're having that single SCCM point of distribution where just that one just your one IT staff or group is able to manage that, and it's not people running around trying to get the right things implemented in the right places. All right. So once we start to talk about outside the network, though, the idea of what happens when they're no longer directly connected to our LAN or WAN, and they're off and they're using all these other different types of devices and even personal devices, right? So we then look at Windows Intune to extend that functionality of SCCM beyond the boundaries of just your enterprise walls and your enterprise network. With Windows Intune, that's when you can start to deliver a lot of those same experiences to mobile devices, and that the end user might have themselves, or two that were provided to them by the enterprise. So with Windows Intune, yes, it's cloud-based. Yes, it doesn't need to be connected to your network in order for you to manage and maintain it. But also, it gives you the ability to set up enterprise portals for things like an Android phone or like an Apple phone, where users can download an app and then have all of the corporate apps that are published specifically to them that they can go ahead and then launch. So it's extending the functionality, but also allowing the user to be able to consume apps that are appropriate for them. Through those apps, you can then you can use other ways to then give them access to data that they would want. So if we're looking at specifically data, things like OneDrive and other comparative products like Box and so on allow you to put all of your data up into the cloud. And I understand that a lot of times there might be some hesitant feelings about that, and plus actual restrictions and policy restrictions that would prohibit that. But where applicable, you can do that, where once your data is up in the cloud and the applications are accessible from anywhere, you're already starting to empower users to be able to continue to work the way that they want to work, be able to access the applications from where they want to access them, and be able to install them on the go on their devices and still have those devices managed by IT. Right? So we're building our way down those two paths where we would be managing Configuration Manager, managing Windows Intune, and basically managing those two devices, those two separate systems separately. Right. So one of the next big components in that is bringing those two together. So actually SCCM and Windows Intune integrate very nicely together. So once we start to do that, we brought together a single pane of glass for that IT staff, that IT admin or the administrator, and he's now able to manage both of his device cases, both of those different scenarios through Windows Intune and SCCM together. And you can see, and that's going to be able to deliver applications, deliver policy settings, deliver secure methods of working across the entire stack of products that anyone can pretty much use across any device that people can use. But also it's giving you a lot of added security control too, because let's say, for instance, someone did want to use company resources on their own personal mobile device, and you have a policy in place that says, yes, you can do it, but as long as you enroll the device inside of Windows Intune, you can allow all that to happen. And then once you no longer want the user to have Windows Intune, no longer have those resources, you can pull them. Or if the user loses their device, you can do remote wipe and things like that. So you definitely are extending more security features by implementing this than by not, because if you're not, people are constantly trying to get data outside of the environment anyway in order to work on it from home or do this and that. So by empowering them to work in this manner, you're actually adding security. So well, the next slide is just to see, like, once you start to get SCCM and Windows Intune and you want to incorporate it into larger environments, this is where it starts to get really messy again, where all of a sudden now, well, how do we get SCCM and Windows Intune to tie into having the same exact resources as our on-prem environment, and how do we get all of that talking to each other? How do we get a seamless user experience so that they have, a single set of credentials for it all working together, and all the licensing is linked up together, and once you save in one spot, it saves everywhere. So obviously it starts to get hairy again, and it starts to get complex. This is not a single or a simple solution, and this is why IT departments have been starting to struggle with this, but then also struggling with the budget on actually how to get this implemented. Not to mention, you can see how many different components have to connect into one another in order to make this work. Once you get something so complex as that, and things have to connect into so many other places, obviously your knowledge for each individual component needs to grow and grow and grow. So you need to get further training. You need to get a better understanding of all the different components that are required in order to make this solution work. And then you might start to go down a path and realize it's not the correct one. And then you have to kind of re-architect what it was you were originally trying to figure out. So this is extending time it takes to adopt these types of technologies as well. So it can get complex and can get hairy. So it almost begs the question is there a better way to do this? How else can we do this without trying to incorporate so many different factors and get them all to work together? All right. So just to kind of sum up this first section here, which is about this mobile device management, and the first storyline where we say, all right, well, we have these two different unique scenarios of managing our two platforms, and it's the on-prem environment and then the mobile devices, and we're going to manage all of our mobile devices in a method where, yes, we're going to take all those considerations into account, and we're going to slice up the management of it in a certain way and start to deliver those out, and we're going to use the appropriate tools to do it. And we're now able to deliver a pretty good experience to end users. They can use mostly every device that they want, but some things are a little bit different when switching between the two. All right, so this is kind of like not a first phase, but almost like a second phase of mobile device management. So going back to this slide, and this is again how do we take apart these items a little bit so that we can start to think about how do we deliver them in a different way then. So if we're not looking to just take user settings and deliver it out onto the onto the PC or onto the mobile device, if we're not looking at just how do we deliver content, or how do we manage an operating system on a PC versus on a mobile device, well then how do we start to do these a little bit differently so that we can alleviate some of the pain points of all that dual management, and then also make it a little bit more seamless, or a lot more seamless for the end user. So that's where we start to look at VDI, right? So a VDI really helps to facilitate a bring your own device. So once we totally separate each component from that layered approach, from that solution management approach, and we strip every single component out and we virtualize every component, and then we start to deliver each one of those components separately and as a virtualized version, all of a sudden then we can really start to see what mobile device management is really about, and what bring your own device is really about. So by implementing that type of solution, we can deliver applications, virtual applications, to any device in the same fashion, and give the same user experience to everyone, regardless of the device that they're using. You can also deliver the specific data and content from secure locations by your rules, by your policies, by your level of governance, to any device as well. VDI is extremely powerful because it's also taking off the entire operating system off of the table, where you can again deliver anything you'd like to any device. So the real idea behind mobile device management here is to actually not have to manage all of these other layers on those devices. Sure, you want some control, especially hardware like security control over if someone loses a device or something like that. But you want to strip out everything else and get it all virtualized, have it delivered by a means that's both secure and adheres to any policies that you want. So whether that's streaming from a cloud service or streaming from a private cloud service that doesn't touch the internet, which is all possible, you can then deliver out the same experience for any of those slices to any device. So taking it a step even further, we can see that people connecting in from somewhere as simple as a library on an iPad are able to connect into a VDI infrastructure that's cloud hosted, be able to receive an operating system that is whichever the operating system is of your choice, and then be able to pull the correct remote application, maybe even from a different server, that's delivered right to that iPad as well. The content, the data that would then be needed. So I always say, like, what's the use of having Microsoft Word if you don't have your Word documents with you? And then in the inverse, what's the sense of having all of your Word documents if you don't have Word to edit them with? And that goes the same for any type of PDF or drawing file or engineering file and design document. You need both elements, right? So if you can deliver both elements in a virtual state, you can have them reside anywhere and you can deliver them to anywhere. And by using things like VDI to deliver that the desktop, using Remote App to deliver the application, using Azure storage for the data, using something like Box for the data, using OneDrive for the data, you're able to deliver those different components out very easily. Once the geography gets very large and there's numerous offices that need to connect to this data too. There's always things like replication issues and where do people pull data from and how they pull that data. Well, extending the reach of that data can be done through things like branch cache, which will basically see all the data in its main location and pull the needed bits as they're selected, as they're picked on, as they're edited. So it definitely will speed up the access to that data. So definitely there's lots of other complementary technologies in here that can fit in to help with the access to all of these items. So going beyond just that initial phase then of mobile device management and moving into a true BYOD or a true virtualized state for all of these elements. This is almost like that phase 3 of MDM, where all of a sudden now people can truly access anything from anywhere, from any device, securely through means that you dictate for your enterprise. But also they could do it from their friend's house. Like if they were out at some a friend's location, a friend's place, and they needed to access company-based resources, the idea behind all of this is that it should be completely doable, be able to pop open a web browser, log into your enterprise resources, and then be able to consume the applications and the data from there all completely securely without having anything else. And obviously there's different layers of security that you can put on there too. Let's say, for instance, well, you didn't want to allow that, but you did want to provide people with a USB stick and have a Windows to Go instance on that USB stick that they could plug into any device, and then that would bring up their a base Windows installment that they can then connect to your company resources with, and then have the rest of that experience. So and that's how you'd secure it. That's another great solution and another great possibility. So and again, there's lots of complementary technologies in there to make all of that possible. So one of the next things that we wanted to kind of touch on with all of this is it's one thing to start to put together all these different ways for people to connect and get the data and be able to use their own mobile devices and consume everything. But but how are they actually connecting to all this stuff, and how does this connect into your home, your on-prem environment? So I really like this slide because this is a great PDF that was put together by Microsoft that kind of shows, one, the complexity of all these things, but two, it shows all of these different ways that people are looking to and connecting currently. And then how do we tie them together so that people have that single username, that single password, and they're able to access everything that they're using to get their job done. So if we start off on the left, you can see people who are connecting via their corporate office on their PC, on their laptop, on their mobile phone, brought to a single unified authentication page where they have that single unified username and password, and then all of that can lead into every single managed application that you have that also integrates into with the same credentials into web-based applications, into other software as a service, into your Office 365, into your Azure. How that connects into your Azure AD, and how Azure AD can connect into an on-prem AD, and then give the same experience for user-based authentication, for application-based authentication, for application resources to on-prem or the cloud. So I mean, it's a very large, complex environment, but it's definitely doable, and it definitely provides the most cohesive experience for the end user. Plus, that how is it, that new saying, not another password, right? It definitely helps to alleviate that mentality and that fear that a lot of end users have about that. So, all right. So this next slide here is to kind of talk a little bit more about that virtualized infrastructure and about getting, we're talking about getting a lot of things in the cloud and having all of that just up there, and basically what does that mean and what can really go up there. So at this stage in the game, it's pretty much almost anything that you would have on-prem, it can be done in Azure. It's almost where the conversation has changed from, oh, what can we put in Azure, to what can't we put in Azure. If it's a specific something like a virtual machine, and you need to have that virtual machine connected to other resources, and those resources need to be authenticated through a different fashion, and that needs to be managed and backed up through some other fashion, all very doable. You're completely able to extend your on-premise network into an Azure network, and then be able to see it and interact with it and work with it just as if it was an extension of your on-premise network. That's all here and doable now. There's really no reason to start to think about it any other way. So if we can extend our networks into the cloud and into Windows Azure, then from there we can then build out all of these other solutions, build out VDI solutions and remote app solutions and data and hosted data solutions inside of Windows Azure that would then allow people to access all of this content from their mobile devices, from their laptops, from their desktops, or from a remote satellite location, where they'll be able to access those things from everywhere, and they'll be able to log into those things using that same authentication method that they're used to when they just sit in front of their PC and do it when they're in the office. So basically, just getting anything and everything up into Azure is completely doable. And what it does is it enables you to really extend all of the functionality from any type of service that you're already delivering on-prem to deliver it to any type of device, whether mobile or not. All right, so that's the last specific slide that I had for this presentation. I know we covered a lot. At this time, I guess we'd like to open it up for questions. I know there's 15 minutes left, so we're pretty much right on schedule for that. So I'd be happy to talk specifics about anything we spoke about, or more generalized conversations if that's appropriate for you as well.
Thanks, Mike. And if anyone has questions, you can just put them in the IM box, and I can tell Mike what they are. Alrighty, it looks like no one has questions from here on out. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. And again, thank you, Mike, for presenting. And if you missed out on any part of the webinar, we will be sending a link out shortly after everything has ended. Have a good day, everyone.
All right, thanks.